Hey there happy campers, it's Kez again, and you are watching Kez Vlogs Daily. If you're new here, then thank you for joining me. I do appreciate your company. If you've been here before, then welcome back. It is great to see you again. We're going to focus on tractors today, but similar issues have popped up in the automotive industry, technology industry, and even within the music industry. So, if you're ready, let's just go for it. So, when you purchase a product from a manufacturer, you might reasonably assume that you can control all aspects of that product. That's a fair assumption. This is how things used to work for as long as we can remember. If you buy something, you can pretty much do whatever you want with it. I mean, it's yours, you own it. Sometimes there are other legal restrictions around that, of course. I mean, you shouldn't shoot a gun just because you own it, and you shouldn't modify your car so it becomes unsafe to operate, etc. But in principle, there's nobody stopping you from rewiring the audio system in your car or retrofitting it with parts that aren't officially sanctioned from the supplier. It is, after all, your car. Also, you're free to sell it on, which turns out to be a rather important part. With the advent of software, a lot of this has changed. Because software is disembodied, you generally don't own what you purchase. Rather, what you're paying for is a license fee, and you're granted a license to use the software. This might be labelled as terms of service or end user license agreement or something to that effect, and it basically covers what you can and can't do with the software. This is distinctly different from ownership, however. License agreements give broad powers to the seller of the license, and generally speaking, those sellers have an incentive to restrict what you're able to do with that license. We're probably all familiar with the battles the music industry fought to retain some semblance of control who got access to the music they distributed. It was just files after all, so they was easily copied. But you probably did agree in a license agreement not to copy those files. The extent to which the music industry went to enforce licensing agreements over their now disembodied goods shows the desperation with which they defended their business model. They had very strong economic incentives to pursue a very restricted licensing regime and enforce that licensing regime drastically. The Digital Millennium Copyright Act is evidence of that. We've slowly come around to accepting that software is different from physical goods and that we only ever actually purchase a license to access it. But where the John Deere case and the whole right to repair issue, as it's being called, cuts to the bone, is that software can be found in just about everything we buy now. A tractor isn't really just a tractor anymore, it's more like a computer on wheels. If you buy a tractor, do you really expect to sign a licensing agreement? So far, you could do with that tractor what you pretty much damn well pleased, as long as you adhered to the law. Suddenly, the manufacturer imposes restrictions on what you can and can't do with the tractor, because those restrictions are part of this license. But why would a company like John Deere go to such lengths to impose in its license agreement? The answer, of course, lies in economics. Now, here's about the time we need to have a little chat about price discrimination. And even though it might sound absolutely awful at first, price discrimination is a foundational principle of economics. You're going to charge different customers different prices according to their willingness to pay. But because you can't easily tell what a buyer's max limit is for any given transaction, you're going to use different features to distinguish different variations of your product. I'll explain what I mean there in just a moment. But just know, without price discrimination, a lot of cheap services that we take for granted wouldn't really be possible, as the companies offering them wouldn't be in a position to make much of a profit. And John Deere works similar to this. They have a range of different products that they price differently. Some of those price differences are obvious, like you want a bigger tractor, you gotta pay more. But some of those differences are a little more subtle. You want a more powerful engine? Well, that's going to cost more too, right? But here's the catch. You don't actually get a bigger engine in your tractor. It's the same engine as the lower powered model, but with the restrictions on that engine performance removed in the software. This helps John Deere save money in stuff like research and development and production. If they only have to equip their tractors with one make of engine, that's a lot cheaper than developing and producing a lot of different engines. And with the help of software, they can still price performance differently. If you're more cost conscious but need a large tractor, you might want to choose one with a little less horsepower. Functionally, that tractor is the same as the pricier model, but the engine's performance is throttled by software so as to make the price differentiation possible. The thing is, that you have to maintain control over your software to be able to do that. Once licensing terms become unenforceable, there's really nothing you can do to maintain your pricing structure. If the software that throttles engine performance can be easily modified, of course everyone would buy the cheaper version and just change the software to give them full access to the mechanical properties of the product. Short of going back and differentiating via distinct hardware, your pricing has suddenly become untenable. The case of John Deere serves to illustrate a broader point that we will increasingly have to reckon with. As software is eating the world, as Mark Andreessen famously proclaimed, a lot of our everyday products will come encumbered with licensing agreements, curtailing our optionality in our use of them. And as more and more things move from being products sold to services with a subscription model, how we deal with those licenses becomes an ever more important discussion. What's at the heart of these discussions is a volatile transitional period, in which we move from an economic model primarily based on the sale of goods to a model in which licenses play an ever-increasing role. There's no question that John Deere's business, and others in similar situations, have permanently changed. For better or for worse, I'm not really sure yet. But on that note, I'll leave this conversation here. I hope I could do the topic a little justice. I know this was only really a short one, but if you enjoyed this, it really does help me out a lot if you leave a like and even subscribe to the channel, but only if you feel like I've earned it. Feel free to share your thoughts with me in the comments also. I pretty much reply to everyone. I've been Kez, and thank you for watching. Peace!